Hey, welcome to another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen with me, Steve Sims. And today I've got Brian Grasso and Carrie Campbell. These are a dynamic duo that I've known for like about 5 or 7 years now. I don't really need to look up how long it's been. It seems like I've known them forever. They're very powerful. They talk about eliminating limits. I asked them, what do those limits mean? And they said, we say limits because it's your limits, not everyone else. Preconceived notions of what your limits should be. They're very powerful. They talk about that experience with teenage suicide, Pitbull. They're working with Pitbull down in Florida. Why they moved from Canada down to Miami to be closer to Pitbull, and what you need to understand about their limits and how to get rid of them. Listen to the episode because you can see what limits you've got that need to be out of here, okay? Because let's be honest, most of them are imposed by you, and this powerful duo are going to tell you why they are and why they need to be out. Enjoy the episode. Hey, Brian and Carrie, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? How are you?
It's good to see you. It's good to see you both again. Now, for anyone that don't know you, and this is going to be interesting because I do, if you were in an elevator and you're going up just 2 floors, how would you quickly explain who you are?
Oh, that's so good. You're going to start.
I'm going to start?
Carrie's going to start.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. I mean, who I am as a person or who we are in business? Because that might be 2 different
The question was, and I'm glad you picked up on it, but the question was deliberate. Who are you?
Wow. I actually feel stumped by that question. Okay, hold on. You have your answer. You go with yours.
I'm ever-evolving. I'm nothing and everything all at the same time. And it sounds jestful, but I'm being quite serious.
Okay.
I love that.
Carrie, do we have yours yet?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a woman who is unstoppable and who stops at nothing to create the world that I want around me and for others.
That's great.
All right. It's always I love asking a question because let's be blunt, it's a stumper, because people are so used to answering, hey, what do you do? And we go into it. But actually being asked who you are is usually a different kind of aspect. And I wanted to ask the who before the what, because the pair of you run different programs. You've been together. You're a powerhouse of a couple. And anyone that knows you knows that there's an immense strength that comes from you two. You're not for the faint of heart. But now let's get into what do you do? So who wants to answer that one first?
Yeah, you can kick off.
Sure.
We can kind of go back and forth.
Well, I think we both defy the box of common. I think you look at us and we don't look the part necessarily, but Carrie's a licensed counselor and I have a doctorate in pastoral counseling. So we do a lot of work in the counseling setting. But most notably, we combine our respective specialties in the counseling arts, and we created a system called Eliminate Your Limits. It's a mindset protocol. It works on mindset and emotional intelligence. And we've applied that system with everyone from world-class athletes and 9-figure business owners to addicts and teenagers. Yeah. And that really is the how and what we do.
Yeah. He just summed that up.
That was pretty summarized well, wasn't it?
I mean, you nailed that.
That was solid.
Yeah, and so I think that we show up in the world in a bunch of different forums. We one of the things for us that was really important when we were creating our process was that it wasn't limited to one specific demographic. We really wanted to create something for the personal development industry that was able to reach everybody, regardless of what they were trying to accomplish for themselves. And for me, I think that's probably the thing that I like the most about what it is that we do.
I agree.
All right. How do you feel as though you reach everyone by, and I'll say this bluntly and from the other side of this camera, and you can slap me when we meet each other. How do you feel as though you reach everyone by basically intimidating the shit out of most people that meet you? Because Brian's a big meathead of a tattooed fella, okay? Yeah. So he's not warm and fuzzy and, hey, come in here, let's hug a tree together. And there's you modeling, do you call it bodybuilding?
I call it physique athletics.
Physique athletics, okay. Yeah. I know I've been corrected before that. We've had Whitney Jones on before. You do incredibly well. You're an immensely powerful, beautiful woman. So there's a lot of intimidation. So how do you break through that and go, hey, come in here. We are going to help you eliminate your fears. How do you first get over that intimidation?
I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna run with that because You know, I'll be honest with you. That's actually surprisingly not something that we've ever had to actually really come up against. And it's actually a conversation that's come up with us multiple times with different people in terms of like the business world, that, you know, people must be so intimidated by you because of the way you look. And you're the woman in a room who everybody kind of doesn't want to approach because they're intimidated. And same vice versa for Brian, who's like 6'3" and massive, right? I think that so I'm not a really big fan of the word authenticity anymore, because authenticity has become a marketing strategy. And I'm always like the person like, dude, authenticity is not a strategy. You are or you're not. And I'll use it for the purpose of this conversation, is that we really do show up as ourselves. And we, you know, one of our dear friends once said that, you know, we're really good at just bringing people into the hug. And so we might look intimidating, but the second you come near us or you're around us in a room, that's disarmed immediately by realizing how real we are. And we don't make any, like, that's just who we are. That's how we show up.
Just to put like a small punctuation on that, of course, I agree with everything you said. Given what we do for a living, we're very familiar with brain science and how the brain works. There's a part of the brain called the lizard brain, which really is responsible for an intuitive feel you get from somebody. It's not rational. It's not something you can articulate. It's you meet someone and there's just something that wigs you out about them, or the exact opposite, something that draws you towards them. And I think one of the things about the way we look and how we present ourselves in the world, there is an unspoken energy that comes off. We love everybody, and we're really just true to who we are. I think it's one of the reasons we do look the way we do, and we don't make apologies for it. We're very comfortable with who we are and what we are. And I think that energy resonates off of us, and we've never had a problem in the room making friends or having people afraid of us in any capacity.
Yeah, you know, it takes me back to a conversation. You obviously know Michael Fishman, a dear friend of ours. The very first time that we attended his Consumer Health Summit, we had a really interesting conversation with him afterwards, because he pointed out to us how much we don't really look like the rest of the crowd, right? Mm-hmm. Tattoos. I probably had pink hair back then. Who knows what. And one of the things that he said to us, which was so, I always held it with me, is he said, not everybody in the room wants to look like you. Like people don't want tattoos covering, you know, 3/4 of their body necessarily, or pink hair or a big beard. But what you guys do for people is you give them permission to want something different for themselves and to be themselves. And it's not, you know, I think, I'll be honest, like, I think for us, and it feels weird talking about us like this, but it's not something we try to do. Yeah. It's just who we are. And that's what we give to the world. And so we've never had that intimidation factor come our way because of that.
All right, good. I wanted to push that button a bit, because a lot of people, and I'm glad you went into the word authenticity. I share that. I share that hatred. I think today what we're looking for is clarity on who you are. And I think the reason people can resonate with you and approach you is because you are who you are, and therefore you're making it very easy for people to make a decision as to whether or not they want to be in your sandpit or not. Yeah. You spoke, and I don't want to wait until the end. I hate it when people wait till the end, so that people can actually see what I see. What is the best way to actually follow and see and get a glimpse of who you are? Where's the best websites, URLs to send people to now?
Yeah, I mean, the two most common places would be our Facebook profile pages, our personal pages, yeah. Brian Grasso and Carrie Campbell. On Instagram, Brian has an Instagram.
I don't operate it. I'm not gonna lie about that. I don't operate my Instagram.
It's new. We just started. I think it's the Brian Grasso, and then I personally have Carrie.Campbell _, I think, WBFF Pro. Is it weird that I don't know my own Instagram handles?
Yeah,
but
it is slightly, yeah,
slightly weird. Carrie something. Carrie Campbell WBFF Pro. It'll pop up. So those are our primary avenues to reach out to us.
I would also suggest our website. You know, it's, you know, we take people on a journey on our website. We expose every parts of ourselves, and the website is full of nothing. There's not a lot to buy. There's a lot to learn from. Yeah. And, you know, join our mailing list, because we pump out great content 3 times a week, and that's brianandcarrie.live.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. We're going to put those links under, but I want people to see how you show up. Now, you're both incredibly intelligent people. Okay. You've got a counsel and a very well validated counseling background, but you speak about eliminating the fears and the concern. What do you eliminate?
Yeah, that's a great way to go first.
Well, basically, we left the word limits as is because everyone's limit is self-imposed and it's individual. So some people it's fear, some people it's anxiety, some people it's sadness and depression. Some people it's a lack of confidence. We would surmise, and we've put this in our system how we teach it. One of our greatest issues with the modern psychological industry is that every limit gets subclassified into a disease category and therefore medicated. But for us, and the way we put this forth in the world is that, depression, anxiety, fear of anything, these aren't inherently bad things. That as humans, part of the glory of being human is that we have a range of emotions we can experience. And if we look at things like Taoism, you can't have one without the other. Joy can't exist unless sadness exists as well. We have to know anxiety for us to be able to touch calm and tranquility. So we want to empower people to understand that their limits are their own, meaning they're largely self-imposed and they're individual, but they aren't concrete, and we shouldn't put people into categories as having afflictions of any kind. Rather, empower them to understand the range of emotions they can feel, the glory and the beauty of that, and just teach them how to state regulate. Anxiety is not a bad thing. Anxiety is an important human emotion to experience, but then how can we equip people to state regulate out of anxiety when it doesn't serve them to be in that state?
Yeah. I also think when I think about it, one of the reasons we stayed broad with the word limits as opposed to eliminate your fear, eliminate your anxiety, is because we didn't want to be limiting, no pun intended. But, the truth of the matter is there is not one person we've ever worked with who doesn't have something more they want. Now, that doesn't imply that they're not happy with where they're at, right? I work with, professional NBA players who, obviously anybody would ostensibly look at their world and think they have it all, right? But they're still working through things to achieve more. So when we're talking about eliminating your limits, I think what's happened in the personal development industry is that it's always almost presented as always so tragic, right? It's always like the people who are addicted or the people who are compulsive or the people who are suicidal. And yes, of course, that's a portion of it, but we didn't want to be limited just to that specific grouping of people because everybody has potential for more. Yeah. And so the entire system that we created, yes, it's designed to eliminate your limits, but there's an entire portion of it that's also designed to create your future and where you want to go. Because I always tell people eliminating your limits is not enough. So whatever that self-sabotage is that's in your way, the story or the narrative that's keeping you stuck and away from where you're at, what happens is a lot of the times is we come through to awareness of what that self-sabotage is, but we don't have the tools or the skills to create something beyond that awareness point. So we end up going to the breakthrough moment and we know, okay, this is where I'm self-sabotaging. This is why I'm doing this. But very few people actually finish the job by saying, okay, now that I've come into that awareness, what do I do about it? Right. How do I change it? How do I create? And creation is a lifelong thing. It's not a one-stop, one-trick pony. You have to keep doing it. And the system provides both sides of that picture.
Now, I called you out earlier and prodded the bell, as it says, to find out about your socials and how you show up. How do you feel the world of social is actually adding to the problem of people limiting their beliefs?
That's loaded. That's a great question. It's a loaded one. Do you mind if I jump in? You can go
first, yeah.
So I think my universal answer is always the same. Social media in and of itself innately does not create the problem. The user creates the problem. It's a user-based experience. And so the only real problem is that people get on social and they start comparing and contrasting themselves and what they know to be true about their own real lives, the actuality of their lives, with the person's highlight reel, which is what they're, most people post about. I compromise and say I agree. That's an issue. But what we try to do is fortify people to understand that if you didn't have a comparative mindset walking into Instagram, then it wouldn't be an issue. So Instagram doesn't provide the problem. Believe it or not, you're creating the problem. And so we want to work on you, not Instagram. Right. One of our least favorite things that we've had this happen on occasion, several times now, where people say, and this is an actual true story. When I get home from work, I give my phone to somebody else, and they put it away from me, and it has all of the social media apps on it, and I get my home phone, which only has access to YouTube. That's how I stay away from social. That's not staying away from social. That is an incomplete use of a deterrent that doesn't really solve the problem. The problem is you've got an OCD with respect to your phone, or you've got a comparative issue that we can work on with you. And that's an important distinction for us, because people often blame social. Social isn't the issue. It's how you use social and the inherent limits you have when you walk into a social app that really creates the problem.
Yeah, you just hit on like one of my soapboxes. You don't know that yet, but I won't get on it for too long. Obviously, I agree with everything Brian says, and I think that we can accept that truth when we're talking about alcoholics, for example. You can't put the bottle of wine in the cupboard and lock it and expect that the problem is going to be sustainably changed, right? The problem is not the alcohol and the bottle. The problem is what's driving you towards that action and that behavior. So, it's the same approach that we take when we're talking about social media. Now, for me, and this is interesting because it nuances some of the stuff we were chatting about before. One of the things that I always teach is that as adults, we were never given the skills to learn how to navigate that, right? At least in our age, right? We went to school where we learned math, and we learned all the hard skills, math, science, history, et cetera. But we were not equipped with the soft skills of emotional intelligence and mindset and how to actually navigate life, the reality of life. So there are very few adults nowadays who know how to navigate insecurities, confidence issues, self-worth, relationship challenges, whatever, all the emotional intelligence aspects of it. And it's not your fault, because we were raised in a school system, an academic system, where that was very much not a part of our world. It's not our fault, but it is our responsibility. And for me, it always comes back to personal responsibility. I can blame the news, I can blame social media, I can blame everything else external myself, but the answer is only going to come from within me, only, every single time. So that's what, for us, why we created what we wanted. We created with Eliminate Your Limits was because we wanted to give people the tools and the skills to be able to work on that for themselves.
That's actually a huge issue that Carrie just raised, is that we are so addicted to hard skills and hard skills education through our educational system, but even into adulthood, that I think even the phrasing of soft skills is a problem. People hear that connotation, things like EQ or mindset being a soft skill. Those soft skills are far and away data point tested as the number one factors for people's success and happiness in life. So that's a lot of what we're doing with younger people now, as well as inserting soft skill education back into their lives.
And you were saying before earlier that and I think that's a good segue, because you've got you're aggravated by a growing problem that you're actually building an app. Now, it's not out, so there's no pitch, but you want people to be aware of the problem and to be aware how you're becoming, hopefully, part of the solution. What is your next chapter of this?
Yeah.
This is a passionate project for us, and maybe starting from the beginning perhaps would be a wise idea. And it really does start with the performer Pitbull, who became acquainted with Carrie, and they had a lot of conversations related to what we do in the soft skills marketplace, EQ, mindset, etc. And first of all, Pitt he's a wonderful man, incredible humanitarian. Talk about a guy with no limits. He really just believes he can do everything, and he really puts that forth incredibly well. But what we kind of all agreed to is that the work Carrie and I do on mindset and emotional intelligence would be a wonderful fit as a curriculum in the schools that Pitbull runs nationwide. He has a series of charter schools called SLAM, Sports, Leadership, Art, and Management. And they're a little alternative in the way they run their curriculum. And it's great stuff. And so we moved from the mountains of Quebec, Canada, down to Miami, where Pitbull is that's where he lives. And a lot of his schools are in the Florida area. And we started piloting our curriculum into his SLAM schools. And it was a raving success. The teachers, the administrators, and the students loved it. They loved the time they were spending with us. They loved what we were teaching. The teachers and administrators saw a dramatic change in the students' attention span, their commitment to excellence in school, their overall demeanor and attitude towards school and being in class. And then COVID hit, right? And so speaking of soft skills, when you're like us and you as well, Steve, circumstances are just opportunities to pivot. They're not walls you have to run into and not get through. You just pivot. So when we got locked out of schools, we can no longer pursue working in the schools directly. We decided to make it a digital component that we could turn into a gamified app. I mean, this is where kids live now. They live on their phones. They live in app technology. And the whole concept of gamification is what keeps young people entertained. And so that's when we pivoted and started driving our curriculum tour. I can tell you want to jump in so bad, which is awesome.
I just get excited.
13 years we've been together. We know each other incredibly well. So that ends my portion.
No, I was just excited listening to, I get excited listening to it because we're talking 5 years now, and we obviously work as much as we work in mindset, we also have a component of our business that's business coaching as well. Right. And so we watch so many people, entrepreneurs, lose interest when their goal doesn't get hit in the first 6 months, and Brian has a history with young people as well, young athletes. My original career started with young adolescents as well. So we have a very strong passion to help youth, and not to sound cliche, but the children are our future, right? They are. And the amount of pain that we've observed in the kids that we've worked with in our life, and we knew that we had to hit younger than when people are now 45, 50 years old, and they've had 50 years of these unconscious narratives just eating away at them. So we obviously, like Brian said, we moved from Montreal to Miami on a whim to pursue this. And then when COVID hit, we had to pivot. And we started creating our app. The app's name, I'm going to give it, is Ellie. So ELI or LE. No, Eli or Ellie?
Eli or Ellie.
Unisex on purpose.
Yeah. Pick your own adventure.
It stands for Eliminate Your Limits Independently. And the best way that I could describe it is it's going to be the Alexa or the Siri of mindset for young people. Yeah. So it's going to be someone's Siri that they can go to. And we've integrated coaching components into it, whereby the young people can learn how to develop that emotional intelligence. But knowing that we had to target an audience that their attention span is limited, they're already in the game world. We've integrated as well a video game into the app. So you do the work, but there's a video game with tokenization inside of it as an incentive to stay involved. And I think for me, I mean, it's our passion project, but I think for me, one of my favorite components of it is that with the work that we already do, I run a group for young girls called the Unstoppable Girls Tribe. Kids eat this up. Kids don't want to suffer. Young people don't want to suffer. They want the answers to the solutions of the emotions they're experiencing, the confusion they're experiencing. Nobody wants to suffer. Yeah. So Ellie is essentially going to deliver young people the opportunity to develop those soft skills that they're not being given in school.
And if I were to take the baton back from Carrie for one second,
go for it.
Because Steve's question was, what's next on the radar for this app? It's taken on a life and esteem of its own. I think, from a business perspective, and we're not talking about business right now, but Steve, I've always believed, and I've always taught this to entrepreneurs, that currency is in your conversations. So have conversations with everybody about what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's why you're on this podcast. I sent Steve a message, said, hey, listen, brother, I don't mean to impose, but would you have space in your podcast so we can talk about what we're doing? We want to raise awareness to it. And of course, Steve being Steve said yes. And we really appreciate that, by the way. But names you recognize, Steve, Connor Blakely, who Forbes magazine called the #1 Gen Z entrepreneur in the world. Yeah. Martha Krejci, who teaches young people how to create affiliate marketing programs successfully. Dr. Brandon Brown, who's an amazing TikTok, I don't know if guru is the right word, but he's just fantastic with that app. These people have all come on as partners. We're talking with Alice Cooper right now and his charity foundation about them coming on as partners as well. It just seems the more people we talk to, the more people want to get involved because they see the absolute need beyond words. And our goal, our main chief aim is to end teenage suicide and the dependencies that young people have on pharmaceutical medication. That is a lofty goal, and we're not stepping away from it. That is the goal.
Now, how far are you away from actually getting this completed for public release?
MVP is due out end of this month, so October of 2022.
Oh, wow.
Which means we'll have a working model that we can offered to people like yourself, Steve, just so you can see the way it functions.
Yep.
The release of the app itself will be quarter 1 or quarter 2 of 2023, with the major launch date being coinciding next September with World Suicide Prevention Day. Carrie is going to do Carrie things and put on a massive party, a massive gala. We should invite Steve Sims.
You want to come?
That's a good idea. But yeah, so the app itself, it'll be ready to download quarter 1 and quarter 2 of 2023. The MVP will put out to select friends end of this month, October 2022.
And that will be separate to what you're doing with Pitbull in the schools, or will you be running an alignment with them?
It's in alignment with, yeah. So the app was actually a part of the original school programming. It was coming at the tail end of that process. But when COVID hit, we had to pivot the whole project. So we decided to start with the app and then realign as we move forward.
Which is interesting because now we just got a contract issued from a BOCES school system in New York State. We're in talks with one here in Arizona. Even though the app isn't out yet, we're already gaining interest from actual schools and school systems around the country who want us to come out and do educational events for their teachers, administrators, and then follow up with the app for their kids.
You know, I get so emotional about this because it's a problem. Like, it's a huge problem. I listen to young people talk about their anxiety and what's wrong with them, and the fact that young people are resorting to cutting themselves as a form of an emotional release because they can't stand the pain. And then parents are freaking out because their kids are hurting themselves without understanding that it's merely an outlet for emotion that these young people don't know what to do with, right? So it's such a need, and the truth is that with the COVID reality, suicide rates skyrocketed amongst kids, and it's become an even bigger problem than it was 3 years ago.
During COVID, Carrie and I said this publicly in multiple mediums that we're not going to see the true emotional fallout from COVID and lockdowns for another 3 years. And now we're 2 years later and we're starting to see it. It's going to trickle for the next 2 or 3 years yet. You cannot, it's not a political comment, but you cannot change the social dynamics of a young person that dramatically and not understand the emotional fallout that's going to happen. If not immediately, then over the next 36 months. And we're starting to see it now.
Yeah.
And how many kids you got?
Of our own?
Yeah.
2 plus 2. I always say 2 plus 2 because our kids are 19 and 17 now, but they both have partners, boyfriend, girlfriend. So I was like, somehow we ended up with 4.
Yeah.
That's what happens as they get older.
Well, in fairness, our son's girlfriend lived with us for 3 years.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have, that was beautiful.
We have 2 biological, 2 additional.
Yeah.
I do find it funny that you called Pitbull Pit. Does that mean if someone doesn't know him, they call him Mr. Bull? It's kind of
funny story on that one. I'll tell you a funny story. I try to not refer to him as Pit or Pitbull and use his actual name, Armando. But it's really funny story. My father, who is not versed on the celebrity world at all, he could never remember his name. And a couple of years ago, he asked me, he's like, "How are things going with what's his face, Wolf Dog?"
Wolf Dog.
And I'm like, I am so telling him that one day.
Right? Seriously, I can't wait to tell my story.
Yeah, that's good. So okay. So I want to pivot onto you for a second, Carrie. So you're a very powerful, strong woman, and you actually work with women a lot in removing their limits and increasing their strength. How you've always been a powerful woman ever since I've known you. We've known each other. I was trying to think about it a while back, but it's 5-7 years, something like that. You've always been a powerful woman. How is the new realm of women's empowerment appearing to you? How is that changing the dynamics, the landscape of those people that are willing to listen to the message, or maybe some of those that are closing off now to the new strength and shout of women's empowerment? How is that affecting you?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this.
So the first thing I want to say is I'm not entirely sure. There was a period of my life, about 10 years, where I wasn't as powerful. I had lost my way. So I think that's important to say, though, because I don't like the gurus or the people the leaders projecting that life's been perfect. I had my share of challenges. I was in an abusive first marriage, and I lost every ounce of who I was. and I had to regain it and refine it. And I think that that's really what allows me to bring what I bring to the table for women nowadays. So I'm okay. I'm not going to get political. I think that currently we are very misguided with women's empowerment. And I'm going to say I believe fully in women equality. I think there should be human equality. I stand by that. But I think we've skewed too far to one side. There's this whole empowerment movement of and I'm assuming I can swear on your podcast because it's you.
Fuck
but
yeah, of course you can.
It's everybody now is a boss ass bitch, and I'm a fuck yes, there's this aggressivity that's come now that in order to be a strong woman, you have to be a fucking badass. And I call bullshit on that. There is a balance in all of us as human beings of yin and yang energy. And we need to learn how to harness the balance of that. I can be compassionate, and I can be patient, I can be loving, and I can be kind, but that doesn't mean that I'm also not assertive and direct and courageous and wise. And the balance of the two of those things for me is what really makes a woman unstoppable. And that's what I bring to the women that I work with. I don't bring whenever anybody calls me a badass, I kind of cringe because I'm not saying that I don't do amazing things humbly, but I don't identify as a badass. I identify as balanced. I identify as having done the work to know when I need to put on my assertive pants and when I need to let my heart beat a little bit more. And the only way that answer comes is from diving deep and understanding yourself. So one of the things that I revolt against in my groups is everybody has to play by the same game, right? I do know my Unstoppable Woman project. It's not about helping women become me and adopt my skills and my attributes. It's about helping them find theirs. And for me, that's where empowerment for anybody comes from, whether you're a male or a woman. A male or a woman, yes. I got that. I thought I was going backwards. That's where balance comes from, and that's where power comes from, and that's really what leads the charge for me when I'm coaching women.
I was having a conversation with a lady that I know very well, and she's a judge, and so she's a very powerful, business iconic in the area. But she turned around and she said, "It's a shame as women when we're seen as offering kindness and compassion, and that comes across as a weakness."
100%.
If you can be kind and compassionate to people, that should, especially in today, in the fact that so many people are bloody annoying, that should be seen as a strength of character. You are willing to offer that compassion to sometimes people that sometimes don't deserve it, but you're there to try and understand that.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more with that. I think that for some reason our world has to get polarizing on one side or the other, and not realizing that you can have both. You really can. No one will walk all over me. I've been walked on in my life. I have been treated poorly, and I'll be the first one to say that I allowed that to happen in my world. As soon as I got out of my victimized mentality around it, I realized that I was a co-creator of that reality because I allowed it. But I can stand here right now and say no one will walk all over me, but I can also stand here and say that I'll love people through it at the same time. And I think that balance is really what creates a truly empowered person.
Haven't we done, Brian? No, we'll come to you in straight away, I promise. But haven't we gone full circle now to the beginning of this podcast when you said that you actually had to recognize and almost go through some of those things in order to be able to own it, learn, and live with it?
Totally, 100%.
So, Brian, please.
Well, look, as a man who's been married to Carrie for 13 years now, and I've watched her evolution, I've watched her gain in power over the years. I mean, she was powerful when we got together. That power has only multiplied ever since. One of the things I've always found remarkable and very, very admirable about my wife is something you touched on with respect to your friend, the judge. Carrie legitimately doesn't care. That is a hugely attractive and powerful quality I've always admired in my wife. If she dispenses compassion, and it's not a popular moment because perhaps the audience doesn't believe the person who received the compassion that was warranted to be issued, Carrie doesn't care. It's one of the things I've always really enjoyed about my wife, the legitimacy through which she does not care how you view her. And I'm not suggesting that's a man thing or a woman thing. I do think it's a human thing. I think we all can run afoul of worrying too much, let alone even a speck, of what the masses or the people in front of us may think of us. And that's something I've always thought is a superpower of Carrie's. Is she is who she is. She does what she does. Whether it's assertive or compassionate, she really doesn't give a shit what you think.
Now, I see also that a lot of the time you keep your last names at each other when you're doing your promoting. What's the reasoning behind that? Because a lot of married people go, right, well, I'm married, I've got to be one. There's a surname, that's it. But you've identified as two people. So what's the thought play behind that, or the belief structure in that?
I'd love to say that there was one. Was there one for you?
I'm not sure we ever talked about it.
I think that's actually, if I were to be honest, so interesting story. We've been married to each other 3 times.
Yeah.
Like, not because we got divorced.
Right.
But
that's an important punctuation.
We've literally had 3 weddings. The first wedding, we never were planning on getting married, just mostly because we didn't care, because we didn't need the government to legalize our commitment to each other.
Sure.
But we did get married in 2015. Never filed the paperwork, so that wasn't a legal format.
Right.
Then we got remarried again a couple of years later
on our live stream show.
Yeah, for a vow renewal. And then when we moved to the States from Canada, we actually had to legalize it for my residency. So we got married again in 2020 or 21 or something like that. 20. So for us, the traditional of relationships, we just don't do traditional. Yeah. So, and also not to mention the fact that where I'm born, well, you're born and raised as well, but you lived in the States. In Canada, it's not necessarily traditional to take your partner's last name. So for us, and I'll be honest, when I was married the first time, I didn't take my husband's last name either. And for me back then, wasn't the case for us now. I had created a professional identity for myself as a counselor, and my name meant something to me. And so I didn't want to lose that. I had worked hard to gain the respect for my name. So I just never even considered changing it.
Shall I give you a little story? Shall I give you a little bombshell? Yeah. Just as we get to the end of this. I took Claire's name when we got married.
Love it.
I love it.
Was it better than your last name? Is that why?
Yeah, we were. That's the subject that we'll chat about when we meet. But there was reason. I took Claire's, and she's often said if we split up, she's taking the name back. So
one of my favorite stories around that is I don't know if you've seen the Tina Turner movie. What's Love Got to Do with It?
No.
But when she was in court after, like, her husband Ike, who was very abusive, the only thing she sued him for was his last name. She was like, that's my name. That's my reputation. Yeah. That's how people know me. She didn't want a dime from him. All she wanted was her last name. And I just love that story. I even got goosebumps just telling that, mm-hmm. I think identity matters. I think identity shouldn't drive you necessarily. So it's got to matter to you.
No, I like that. All right, so as we wrap up now, you've got your app coming out. I love the stance. I love the belief. I love what it stands for. But have you come out with an idea of where people are going to be able to find it, or should they just follow you on your website?
It's a great question. Our preference for now is that they just follow us through our social channels or through our website, whatever is more convenient for them. Mm-hmm. We post content daily through our website and through social. We're just not at a phase yet where the creating a social footprint for our app is at the top of the priority list. So This is a little premature to even bother offering an idea for that. But if you follow us on social or through our website, you'll be keyed into every announcement as it comes.
Shout out your website again. Give us the website link.
It's brianandcarrie.live.
All right, we're going to actually put all those notes in, but anyone that's listening to this on a treadmill or Peloton or anything like that, we want to make sure it's on there. Folks, Brian, Carrie, I love you. And when the app comes out, we want to hear about it, because then we'll obviously spread it out again, because it's a cause and a need. And anyone with kids, anyone without kids, we should protect our young, because they're the ones that's going to steer our future. So thank you very much for doing what you want. I'm looking forward to seeing you very shortly, and I'm looking forward to this coming out. So look after the pair of yourself.
Awesome.
Thanks, Steve.
See you later. Bye.
Yes.
Hey, I hope you liked that episode of the Art of Making Things Happen podcast. And remember, these are done for you. If you like them, subscribe, share them around. But if you don't like them, send me an email to ask@steveDsims.com and you can tell me what I need to do to make this the most dynamic podcast you listen to. Anyway, make sure whatever you learned from the last podcast, you actually do something with. Without action, it's just a bunch of people blowing air. Have a good time. Until next time. Bye.